If there's one thing that we're always going to run into, it's challenges. Challenges and obstacles as we make our way towards our desired outcomes, goals, and intentions. But what if there was a way of turning your obstacles and challenges into opportunities? In this episode, we're going to be discussing how to turn an obstacle into an opportunity, how you can use your obstacles to actually set you free by shifting the way that you think about them. This episode will help you to think about obstacles and challenges differently in your life so that when you inevitably encounter them, you won't shy away from them, but instead actually use them to propel you forward. Welcome to the Zen Stoic Path, where we share a modern take on timeless wisdom to help you create unshakable inner peace. I'm your host, Victor Pierantoni. Let's get into the show. I'd like to begin this episode by sharing a Zen koan. Now, this is a koan that I had heard recently, and I hadn't heard it before, but when I did, it helped a lot of things click for me. And so it goes like this. There's a Zen master sitting with his student, and the master says to the student, "If you believe the stick that I'm holding is real, then I will beat you with it. If you tell me that it's not real, then I will beat you with it. If you say nothing, then I will beat you with it." The student sits there for a second. He grabs the stick and breaks it in half on his knee. Now, in order to understand this story, it's important that we backtrack for a second and understand exactly what obstacles are and how they come up in our lives. Now, we've discussed this quote on the podcast many times before from Marcus Aurelius that says, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Now, this is a quote from Marcus Aurelius that highlights how the obstacle is actually the answer to the problem that we think we're facing. Ryan Holiday even went as far as to write an entire book on this called "The Obstacle is the Way." Now, when I initially heard this, I always just thought it was some philosophically uplifting or motivating thing to say. But there's actual real merit to this in terms of how we evolve and transform ourselves through the evolution of our lives. Anytime that you set a goal, what's really important to understand is that you are quite literally changing the way the entire world looks to you based on what you're deciding is important. The human brain is able to process 126 bits of information per second. But in our modern age, we are being hit with about 11 million bits of information per second, according to the book Flow. And so what's actually happening here is that we are actually filtering down from 11 million bits of information, only 126. So we are actually making most of the world invisible to us. Now, what determines what 126 bits of information actually get filtered? What determines that are our beliefs, values, and attitudes. Through our beliefs, values, and attitudes, we delete, we distort, and we generalize information. So most of reality is actually invisible to us at any one given time. Now, why do we do this? We do this so that we are able to be focused on what we have deemed important in our system. Now, how do we determine what's important in our system? Anything that we emotionally engage in. So our beliefs, values, and attitudes are all thought constructs that we use as a symbol or a map for reality that helps us understand how to navigate it. What we decide is important in terms of those filters is whatever we emotionally engage in. So anytime that we set a goal or we set an intention, or we say that we want to do something different in our lives, what we're doing is we're quite literally reshaping the way the entire world looks to us to actually show us things that are related to what's important. What's actually happening here is we are activating what is called the reticular activating system, or the RAS, which is going to determine what we find important, and it's going to seek out what is familiar. So an example of this is like if you ever bought a new car, or if you wanted to buy a new car, and suddenly as soon as you bought it or you said you wanted that car, you suddenly start seeing a bunch of them in the street. It's not that the car suddenly magically appeared. It's that your RAS is now attuned to seeing this in your reality. So the same thing happens with our goals, our intentions, and our desired outcomes. When we decide that we want something, basically what's going on is our whole filtering system is shifting the world so that we notice the things that are related to that. Now, anytime you set a new goal or intention, your world is going to be populated by the following three things. The first is neutral stimuli. Most of this you won't even notice because, well, it's neutral. It's not going to grab your attention. The next thing that you're going to notice is you're going to notice omens. You're going to notice omens, signs, synchronicities, coincidences, things that bring you closer to the thing that you say that you wanted, things that bring you closer to what you've said is important. And the last thing that you're going to notice is you're going to notice obstacles. Now, when you notice obstacles, this is where you're going to start seeing things that are actually in your way, things you need to overcome, or circumvent in order to get to your desired outcome or goal. When obstacles come up for most people look at obstacles as a deterrent, or they allow themselves to feel defeated or discouraged by obstacles. And they do this by actually giving their power away to the obstacle. So at any one given time, in order to achieve the life that we want and to be the person that we could be, that we have the potential to be, it is important that we empower ourselves. And the more we reclaim our power in the face of obstacles, the better we can deal with them and the more we can turn them into opportunities. Here's the problem, though, is that power cannot actually be taken from us, but we voluntarily give it away because the outside world will manipulate or coerce us into giving our power away. So this happens voluntarily, but oftentimes we get hypnotized by the content of the outside world, by the story or the drama that's happening in the outside world around us. So what's really important to understand here is that when you're filtering those 126 bits based on what you think are important, your beliefs, values, and attitudes, basically what's actually happening is the outside world is becoming a mirror of your internal world. So in fact, you are seeing yourself in everything and everyone all the time, including the omens and obstacles, including those things that are guiding you towards that goal, like the good and positive things. You're seeing yourself. When you're seeing obstacles, you're also seeing yourself, because when we set these goals and intentions, we are bringing up that which is unconscious that we have not yet dealt with. So life will present us with circumstances, people, and even our own stories to show us where we're not yet free, and these take the form of obstacles on our path. So how do we actually deal with them? We need to reclaim our power back. So circumstances is one way that people give away their power. An example of a circumstance could be the traffic that is between you and the destination that you're going in. So if you've ever blamed the traffic for being late, that would be blaming or giving your power to a circumstance. The next thing is we blame people. We give our power away to people. Let's say you had a goal to become more confident so that you could do better at work or so that you could have a better dating life. One way that we give our power away to people is we're like, well, I would be confident, but I'm really insecure because of this thing that this person said to me when I was in grade school. That would be you giving your power away to someone else, someone who said something at one point in your life. So this is another way in which we give away our power. And the third way is actually through the stories and narratives that we tell ourselves, the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, the identities that we hold about ourselves. So if you ever think to yourself, well, I would start that business, but I'm just not a disciplined person, or I would like to improve my dating life, but I don't have anything to offer. If we tell ourselves stories like this, we're actually giving our power away to actually mental constructs and narratives that we're holding. So the reason why you want to look at these obstacles as a way of setting yourself free or as an opportunity is because everything that you notice in your outside world, remember, is a mirror of what's going on inside. So everything that you're noticing outside is actually a projection of the things that stand in between you and that goal, that stand between you and the intention. And if we give our power to the content of our outside world, then we're getting lost in the illusion. We're getting lost and hypnotized by the stories and the dramas of the outside world. So when you're starting to experience these types of obstacles, the thing that hypnotizes you and prevents you from reclaiming your power are what are called in Buddhism the 5 hindrances. Now, the 5 hindrances are the following: sensory desire, ill will, sloth, restlessness, and doubt. Now let's break down each of them and how they actually show up as a way of pulling you back into your old limiting stories. Sensory desire, for example, is that when you are trying to do something that is going to improve your life, let's say you're coming out of your comfort zone. So the way that we hinder ourselves through sensory desire is, let's say we're feeling uncomfortable or we're feeling stressed as we go forth towards a new goal. Maybe you want to have a snack, or you want to have something sweet, or you want to have some kind of a treat, or maybe you want to sit down and watch TV and be super lazy. These are ways that we are looking for sensory pleasure as a way of distracting ourselves from actually facing the obstacles head on. Ill will comes from that blaming of other people. When we start to look towards other people, we hold resentments or grudges towards other people, we are actually still giving our power away in that way. So that's the second way that we hinder ourselves on the way to actually accomplishing or actualizing the intentions or goals that we set for ourselves. The next would be sloth. So sloth is actually entering into things half-heartedly, entering into things without a sense of aim or purpose. When we engage in sloth, we're basically bringing a half-hearted energy into what we're doing. We're 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Now, this shows up when it comes to our obstacles because basically what's actually happening is we have doubts and worries that we're holding on to that is keeping one foot in, one foot out. We may want the thing, but we may have limiting stories and thought constructs that are actually pulling us back, which leads us to the next hindrance, which is restlessness. Restlessness and worry is essentially not having an aim or a purpose. It's looking at all the different possibilities and not deciding on a single direction. This will increase our restlessness and our worry and ultimately leave us feeling anxious on the way to the things that we are trying to achieve. And lastly, we have doubt. Any doubt that you experience is a limiting story. It's a limiting belief, a decision that you've made at one point in your life to entertain a thought that doesn't allow you to be all that you can be. And so when we allow the hindrance of doubt to come in, this comes in the form of stories. This comes in the form of our beliefs, our identities. So these 5 hindrances are what actually seduce us back into giving our power away to circumstances, people, and stories. Instead, when these things come up, it is important to realize that all of them will seem very convincing and like very valid reasons to give your power away, to blame circumstances, to blame other people, to blame your childhood or the thoughts that you hold about your childhood on why you can't be the person that you want to be. But instead, when these things come up, it is important to be mindful of them, to not react immediately and get pulled into the illusion. What you want to do instead when these things come up is do what Viktor Frankl talked about, which is to get into the space in between stimulus and response. All of these things, the circumstances, the people, the stories in your head, these are stimuluses that cause you to react in a certain way. Typically, the reaction that we've been conditioned to is to give our power away, to blame, to justify why we can't. If you get into that space in between stimulus and response, and some great ways of doing that are through meditation and mindfulness, or the Zen Stoic exercise of sovereign awareness. But if you get into that space in between stimulus and response, you're able to make a new decision. When you make a new decision, you are able to actually create a new reality. Everything that you're seeking is on the other end of the decision that you're afraid to make. When you make that decision, you are cutting off from all other options. You're cutting off from those hindrances and you're moving towards the thing that is truly most important to you. So when these things come up, get into that space. Take a moment to just take a breath. Feel your feelings that are coming up. Take a breath and don't entertain giving your power away in these situations, because it's very much like the master with the stick. Right? If you react one way, you're going to get hit with a stick. If you don't react at all, you're going to get hit with a stick. If you don't believe the stick is there, you're going to get hit with a stick. Instead, just choose to break the stick. The stick represents your unchecked assumptions about life, the things that limit you, the things that cause you to be less than you are or convince you that you're less than you are. Choose instead to break the stick. Break the thought constructs that keep you trapped. In this way, you reclaim your power and you use each and every obstacle and challenge you run into as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity to become more than you are. Another story that illustrates this point really well is the story of the Gordian knot. So there was a legend that said anybody who can untie the Gordian knot would be prophesied to be the ruler of Asia. So Alexander the Great, when his army came into the city where the Gordian knot was, he decided that he would take on this challenge because he wanted to be the ruler. And nobody had been able to untie this intricate and complex knot that had been tied. And Alexander the Great went and he looked at it, and without any hesitation, he took out his sword and he cut right through the knot. In that moment, he did not succumb to the unchecked assumptions. He did not succumb to these rules that were unspoken. Nobody said that he had to physically untie it. Nobody said how he needed to untie it. And so he just chose to cut through the knot. Break the stick, cut through the knot, set yourself free. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This episode is our season 2 finale of the Zen Stoic Path. So we're going to be taking a break for a few months and we'll be returning back in the fall with season 3 of the Zen Stoic Path. If you are looking for a powerful way to bring this philosophy into your life so that you're able to operate at your best with peak performance, perfect decision-making, and personal fulfillment, go ahead and click the link in the description below to book a call with me for a free 60-minute peak flow state consultation. This is a new service that I'm doing that will allow you to drop into a flow state easily and effortlessly, as well as remove your biggest mental roadblock. Go ahead and click a link in the description below, and I'll see you on the other side.